Hello, hello. We're just getting started. This is day 3 of Discoverfest. I'm super excited. We got Ben Collins today. Ben, say hello.
Hi, everyone.
We'll get started in just a few minutes. And I see folks already writing in from the chat. While we let some folks join, and like I said, we'll get started in just a few moments. Feel free to write in. Say hello. Let us know where you're writing in from. Let us know where you're joining us today. I have a feeling this is going to be a bit of an international presence, and that's always incredible to see folks join from all over the world. And also let us know you could hear us. That would be great. Can you hear us? I haven't seen anybody in the chat say they could hear me. I want confirmation. I do see somebody who already wrote in, Ben, they're actually here for your jokes today. That's what I'm saying for the workshop. Cool. Okay.
You can the whole presentation.
The whole presentation's jokes. Cool. You can hear us. Nice. The comments are starting to flow in. I think I had a lag for a second. This is incredible. You can hear us loud and clear. Like I said, we're going to get started in just a minute or two. To give kind of a breakdown of how this is going to go today is, for those who know Ben, awesome. For those who are seeing Ben for the first time, he's going to give a bit of a background on himself. Today, he's obviously going through his Discover Google Sheets bundle and in different pieces of that. If you join late, have no fear. There is a replay available. There'll be a replay that goes out after the fact, or there'll be a replay that's actually available on this workshop page as well. And lastly, the content's going to be 30 to 45 minutes worth. At the end, there will be time for Q&A. So as you have questions, hold on to them, put them in the chat. I can see the chat is super, super active for folks saying hello to Ben. Ben, you got folks saying hi from everywhere. Yeah, just to give you an idea, I see folks, we got Indiana, we got Rockland, California, we got Seattle, we got Istanbul, Turkey, Atlanta, Georgia, we got the UK, North Carolina. Hello from the solar system, third planet. Wow. That's the meta of it. We got the big ones. Well, that is incredible. Without further ado, Ben, I'm going to bring your screen up. Yeah, and why don't you tell the folks about yourself, and then we're all very, very excited for your workshop.
Sure.
Your screen is up.
Thanks very much, Aaron. And I'm Teachable, really excited and honored to be here today to present to you all. Welcome wherever you are. Quick intro for those of you who have not met me before. Ben Collins, and I create courses about Google Sheets, unsurprisingly, Google Sheets and app script coding. And my own background is that going way back after college, I studied to become an accountant, which meant I spent a lot of time in Microsoft Excel. And over the years, I sort of built up knowledge about formulas, about data, about how to build dashboards, learned some coding along the way. And I sort of spent my 10,000 hours, if you like, in spreadsheets, far too many weekends that I can remember. But so then about 5 years ago, I sort of jumped across from the Microsoft world into the Google Sheets world. I found that I didn't really have a passion for accounting, but I had a real passion for the technology side, for the data, for learning to code, for spreadsheets. And I decided to try and make that my career instead of the accounting. And I did. So I left my job without much of a plan and did what every other job seeker does, which is to start a blog. And my blog was about all the different technical things I was sort of teaching myself and learning. And one of them was Google Sheets. And that took off. It led to some client requests, and it led to the courses, the online courses that I have today on Teachable. So that was my journey from way back when to today. But I can tell you that I wasn't born being good at spreadsheets. In fact, I was completely hopeless when I first started my first accounting job. I could do a basic sort of to-do list in a spreadsheet. That was about it, really. And, I realized there was one pivotal moment, one day in particular, when I remember very clearly, let me just get back to my slides, that there was this day, I said, this pivotal day in my career where I was asked to do this job. My boss came over and he said, he was this nice Aussie guy. He said, "G'day, mate. Can you just join it?" Okay, I won't do the Aussie accent. "Can you join this sheet over here, or this Excel sheet? bring the data into this other Excel, join them together, make this report and send it to the client. And I said, well, sure, I can do that. It's going to take me all day because I have to copy and paste these lines of data from one Excel to the other. And he sort of nearly fell off his seat. He said, you don't have to do that. What are you talking about? He said, let me show you the VLOOKUP formula because that will make your life a whole lot easier. So he sat down with me. He gave me a quick sort of 5 to 10 minute crash course in the VLOOKUP. And it really opened my eyes to the power of spreadsheets. I learned that day that, here's a formula that can do, takes you a couple of minutes to set up once you know what you're doing. And it just automates the job that would have taken me hours and I probably would have made mistakes. It does it straight away, accurately, and changes the game. And so I realized that day, I said, I sort of looked around at my colleagues. I saw the ones who had really good technical skills, good data skills, and they were getting the better jobs. They were doing more interesting work. And, when new work came in and it was new data sets or new projects, they were usually the first people to get picked because, the bosses knew that they were the team with the skills that they needed. So I decided that day to become an active learner. I decided I need to learn about the VLOOKUP. I'm not going to just bury my head in the sand and just keep doing the job that I'm doing. I'm going to try and incrementally just increase my knowledge every day. And it was no big radical change. It was just a case of spending an extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes each day whenever I was doing my normal day-to-day work, in a spreadsheet. I would say, right, before I just dive into the manual way that I've been doing forever that I know works, let me just Google whether there's a better way to do it. And over time, I just learned all these different spreadsheet techniques. And sort of, that's where this obsession came from and set me off on this journey. And here I am today. So this slide or the message here is just definitely, it's always a good investment to invest in your own learning. So that's a little bit about me. That's my little backstory. So why are we talking about spreadsheets today? Why are spreadsheets still so important? Well, they were invented nearly 40 years ago, and still they are pretty much the best way for us non-engineers, for us non-developers to get hold of our data and do stuff with it, because we can see it. We can see it in front of us in the spreadsheets. When you work with code or databases, it's one more level removed from you. It's much harder to conceptualize what you're doing. Whereas with a spreadsheet, because you can see it, you can really understand what you're doing. So great way still to get your hands dirty with your data. Now, of course, the big reason is that everybody else uses spreadsheets. The stats here on the left-hand side of this page are staggering. Hundreds of millions of people use spreadsheets every day. So the chances are that anytime you're having some kind of issue with your spreadsheet or a technical question, it's probably been answered somewhere out there on the web, on the internet. So great big user base means there's tons of questions, tons of answers, tons of communities, and tons of people wanting to help. What else? Well, I talked already about how the people with the spreadsheet skills are super useful in the office. They not only on their own projects but helping others, and so you make yourself indispensable in your work. It's such a good investment. Spreadsheets themselves democratize data. They make data more accessible to a wider pool of people, which of course means more insights and better insights, because everybody's involved now, not just the few people who can understand the data. And it makes things quicker. I talked already about how I replaced some of my own manual processes with with formulas and with code and things like that. So just by knowing how to use a spreadsheet can get you there much quicker than if you're just stuck doing things manually. Today then, in this workshop, the big goal is for everybody to hopefully go away with at least 1 or 2 or hopefully even 10 takeaways, 10 actionable things you can do in a Google Sheet with data. And we're going to use Teachable transaction data. So hopefully it'll be even more relevant, since a lot of you I know are Teachable creators. So we're going to start by just another slide talking about what data analysis is, just to give us some context before we dive into the nuts and bolts, before we dive into the nitty gritty. Then the 10 practical techniques I talked about, and some of the ones we'll be talking about within those 10 are the pivot table. It's the mighty pivot table. It's the probably or arguably the most useful thing, the most useful feature in a spreadsheet, because it allows you to slice and dice your data and do the analysis. So pivot tables, it's the number one thing you should go away and learn in a spreadsheet if you don't know them already. They're so useful. I'm going to show you a neat formula, a really cool way of bringing in data from Wikipedia to add to your Teachable data, to just augment it, to make it more useful. And of course, this presentation wouldn't be complete without talking about the famous formula, the one that lets you into the spreadsheet club. That is, of course, the VLOOKUP that we mentioned already. It's the most famous formula for that. And then lastly, let's have fun. I mean, I'm going to have some fun. I hope you will too. It's spreadsheets, but it's more importantly, it's learning. We're all learning right now. Hopefully, learning is, I think, one of the greatest joys in life. Okay, so that's today. That's the agenda. So let's begin. Let's get started by just talking about data analysis before we jump into spreadsheets. Really, you can sometimes get stuck on the thinking it's about this big engineering stuff. It's about being super technical, knowing databases and building data pipelines and all this sort of stuff. Really, it's very simplistic at its highest level. It's just asking questions and trying to use data to find answers. And if you think about it that way, and you start, before you just open your spreadsheet, think about the questions you want to answer. So it might be something like as simple as, what are my most popular products that I sell? What are my most popular courses? Or it might be, what times of day or what days of the week or what days of the month are the most popular for people to buy the courses. And knowing this sort of thing might give you some insight that will help you in your marketing efforts. So step one is to make that plan, ask those questions. Step two is to go and get hold of that data and then prepare it and do whatever you need to do with that data to make it ready for you to start doing your analysis. Step three is to go and do the analysis, the most fun part. And this is where the pivot tables come in, the formulas come in, and this is where you turn that raw data, you refine it into useful insights. And then step four is where you wrap it up and put the bow on the top. Really important step, actually, because you've done all that work and you don't want to skip this last step. You want to put the bow on it so that it's really easy for the people you're trying to get the data to just understand and absorb that information quickly and easily, and so you can act on it. Because the whole point of this is to get those answers and then act on them, not just to do it for fun. I mean, it is fun as well, but that's more of a byproduct than not the actual aim necessarily. Excuse me. Great. So a quick little story for you before I jump into spreadsheets. Some of you might have heard this joke already. Those of you who've followed me a little bit. But I once taught an Excel class in Washington, D.C., and I had a very confused student sort of 20 minutes into the class. And she said, why are you talking about calamari all the time? It's in the evening, I'm getting really hungry now. Why do you keep talking about calamari? And I was as confused as she was now. And then a few minutes passed, and then I sort of realized that every time I was saying column A, with my English accent being here in America, I was probably talking quite quickly, saying calamari, column A, calamari. It all kind of sounds the same. But today, I won't be mentioning calamari again now. I'll just be talking about column A. So if you do hear the word calamari, you can assume it's actually column A I'm talking about. So with that out the way, with that quick caveat out the way, let's jump into a demo, a real actual live demo in Google Sheets. As I said, we're going to use Teachable data for this demo. because I figured that would be the most useful for you. And the Teachable data we're going to use is your transaction data. So if you want to do this, later on today or tomorrow, you can go to your sales page or transactions in Teachable, click the export CSV file, and you'll get an email from Teachable with a link to go and open that sheet. So we've done all of that. I'm going to assume we've done that. What I've done is gone and downloaded that data and then taken out all of the personal identification of people, their names and emails, etc. So I can have a nice clean data set here just to show you on the screen. Whoops, we'll go to the blank sheet first. So the first thing you need to do is get the data into Google Sheets. This was step one of the pipeline idea, the data analysis pipeline. Now you have a few different ways of doing it in Google Sheets. You can take that CSV and drop it into your Drive folder, click to open it, and then click to open into Google Sheets. The way I'm going to show you just here is to come to File, to Import. Let's upload, which means from our local desktop. We'll click, and then here is what this folder would look like from Teachable. A comma separated, it's just a flat data file from Teachable with all that data. We click open, we click import, and that brings the data into our Google Sheets. Now I'm going to cancel, and just go to the set I already imported so that I can just show you. So I cleaned out everybody's name, I cleaned out everybody's email address, because I didn't want, obviously, to give those away. I've scrambled the ID numbers and that sort of stuff. So we've got some good anonymous data here. Okay, so we've got the data in. The next thing I always do, and I advocate that you do the same, is to click on the number 1 here to highlight that whole top row. Let's center these the headers, make them bold, wrap them, and then that's a standard way of just defining your header row. So that's a header row. Now, when I scroll down, I lose my header row. Disaster. What I need to do is anchor that up here at the top. So you can go View, Freeze, and freeze the top row. Or you can do the quick way of doing it, which is to hover over this line until you get the little grab hand, and then click and drag down and let go. And now when I scroll down, I still have that nice top row for me. Great. So that's step 1. It was import the data and format that nice header row. So let's go to our little tracker here. That was step 1. Let's tick that. It's done. Step 2 is to understand our data. Whoops, we've skipped that page. There we go. So 2 things for this one. Let's understand our data. Now, a little tip that a really experienced data analyst told me one day, years and years ago, was to tell the story of one row. So we'll click on row 2 here and just walk across that row. And so the first column, it's the date. Second column is the ID. Third column is the user, and just go one by one across all the way across your data set. So you know what's in every column before you, when you've got a lot of columns like this, it's really useful to do that. Just spend 5 minutes doing that so you understand what's in your data set. Because today, for example, we'll get to here and we'll say the final price is $9,900. Impossible. I mean, I wish I was making sales at that amount. Of course, I'm not. It's $99. So straight away, I've noticed that the decimal point is missing on the amounts. They're all a factor of 100 too big. And of course, I don't want to go and do my pivot tables and come away thinking I earned, fantastic sales numbers this year, 100 times better than last year. I want to make sure I spot that before I go and tell, my colleagues or whatever. So by doing that, walking across one row, we spotted this, that missing decimal point. So it lets you spot things about your data you need to fix. The other quick thing you might do when you're understanding your data is coming up to data to column stats. It's a new feature from Google Sheets, and it just tells you a bit about what's in the column. So, here's a list of the course names I have with how many sales were made, how many in total, 694 rows, no blank cells, and 12 different unique values. So really super useful just to know this kind of stuff. before, just gives you some sense of your data. It'll help you know, for example, you might think 694 rows, hang on a minute, I should have 2000. I'm missing a big chunk of my data. And you do this kind of thing before you get too much into the weeds of the formulas and things. Great, so that was step 2. That was to understand our data and tell the story of one row. So step 3 is to clean the data, to fix the data. So we noticed this mistake, well, not mistake, rather. We noticed all of our figures, all of our fees, all of our earnings, etc., need to be divided by 100. So let's fix that before we do any analysis. So I'm going to just fix the earnings column because that's what I'm interested in for this case study. But you'd fix whichever columns you need. Ideally, you'd probably try and fix them all. So let's insert a new column, and let's call it earnings fixed. Now, what I always advocate doing again when you insert a column into a data set like this is I go and give it a color. So the whole column is colored. I know it's a calculated column I've included myself. It wasn't one of the original columns. Then we'll do the quick.
And Ben, a quick question, just for folks joining late. This is your Teachable Schools exported data, right? Because folks are asking where should they source data from. And if I watched you correctly, this is actually just an export from your.
It's an export from my school. I could easily put a file together actually with some clean data like this for people after the workshop. We could send out with the recording if you like.
Yep. So I think that's something we could do after for folks who don't necessarily have a Teachable School yet. Perhaps we could send out a link after with some clean data from Ben. For those following along who are already on the same page, proceed. But for those who are asking where to access this data,
absolutely. So again, and I'll show you afterwards. Actually, I'll show you that screenshot of Teachable where you go and download this data. So what we've done, we've included this column. We've colored it so that it's denoted as a different column that we're adding. And we're going to do that calculation now. We'll click this cell and divide it by 100. So really nice and simple, this fix. And the nice thing with Google Sheets, the Google Sheets artificial intelligence bots sitting on those servers are doing nice things for us these days. And it fills the rest of the column in with the autofill. Hopefully soon we'll live in a land where we just press tab a few times and it does all the calculations and the whole 9 yards for us. But there we go. So it's filled out that column. Quickly, let's just jump to the bottom. So holding down Control and my down arrow, or Command and my down arrow on a Mac, just to the bottom of the column, make sure it's filled in all the way to the bottom, and we're not missing any data. Okay, great. So that's fixed. That's looking good. That was step 3. Great. So let's now jump into actually doing some analysis. So we've got the data set is ready. So let's build a pivot table. If you've never done a pivot table before, then I'm going to go nice and slowly and just show you. It's about 4 clicks of your mouse. So if you can do 4 clicks of a mouse, you can build a pivot table. Really easy. So first thing you need to do is just be clicked somewhere inside your data set. So it doesn't really matter where, on your header row, in one of the columns, because it will then automatically just fill out and grab your whole data set. So then we go data, and then we click pivot table. I know it's pretty scary, but just go ahead and click it. Oh, not too bad. Pop-up comes up. Just leave the defaults. You might want to just check that data range looks right. You can always change it as well if you want. We're going to put into a new sheet. Pretty much you'll want to go for a new sheet for now. And there we go. And basically, before we jump into the pivot table, let's talk about the data for a moment. So let's go to this column here, method. Let's think about that one. So it just tells me whether it's Stripe or PayPal data. And I might be really interested to know, well, how much of my transactions go through Stripe and how many of the transactions go through PayPal. So right now I might try and add them up. So there's my Stripe ones. There's some more Stripe, a couple more Stripe down there, a few more down there. And you can see it's all mixed in with the PayPal stuff. It's going to be really awkward to try and count these. I mean, super tedious to try and do that manually. Of course, I could use formulas like a sum if, but again, you need to know how to use them. Still a bit finicky. So what we'll do is use a pivot table instead. And all we're going to do with the pivot table is sort of squash those rows, roll those rows up. So I'll have a single row for Stripe, a single row for PayPal, and then it will add all of those earnings for me for that row and all the earnings for the next row. So that's all the pivot table is doing in this case. We're just rolling the data up into these categories. Sorry, I knocked the microphone there at the edge again. I'll try not to do that again. So method. So what we're going to do, sorry, come into here in rows, which is this box over here. I want to put Stripe and PayPal as my summary rows. So I come into rows, I click add, and I'm going to click method. That was the column that had the Stripe and the PayPal in. And look at that, it's going to do that now. And what it's going to do is summarize the data based on PayPal and based on Stripe. So we'll start by just adding some values next. So I'm not going to worry about columns in this one. They would just be categories across the top, but we won't do that here. We'll just add some values. So let's add count the user. So count how many users we have in each of these groups. So click that. It's going to set it to a count for me. So 162 rows of data in here were PayPal, and the other 532 were Stripe. So it's 162 rows of PayPal stuff mixed in with 532 rows of Stripe. And that gives me that total of 694. Let's add the earnings as well, because we can just see there then what that is. So it's about a 25% split for PayPal and 75% for Stripe. So, you know, there's no way we could really see that or understand that from the data just by looking at the data. So the pivot tables gives a very quick way to get insights into our data. Now let's think, what else would be interesting to know? I reckon this column here about the country would be pretty interesting to know where my sales are happening, where your sales are happening. So once we've created one pivot table, we can copy it. We don't have to create a new pivot table. So I can go Control C, come down here, let's give ourselves some space, press Control V to make a copy. And it's an active pivot table. It doesn't just copy the contents of the cells. It's a real active pivot table with the same data range. So we're ready to go. So I get rid of the user for the moment, and I'll get rid of the method by just clicking over here on the right, just so I have just the total of the earnings there. In fact, why don't we just go back and quickly start from a blank one so I can show you again. We've got the blank pivot table. We want to add these countries down here as rows that we're going to summarize our data for. So we're going to add, and we'll choose the charge country. There we go. Then we'll add back the earnings fixed. Remember, that was the column that we fixed. And then quickly just highlight the data there and format it as dollars. Now, a few things to note here. First of all, I mean, I don't know what half of these countries are because they're just a 2-letter code. So that's kind of a bit of a problem. We'll go and fix that in a moment. And then the next thing is, these are all ordered alphabetically, whereas probably I'm more interested in knowing which are my bigger markets. You know, where have I done more business? Because I want to go and sort of investigate there more. So it would be nice to organize this data a little bit better. So we've got the pivot table. Let's do a bit more with it now. Let's go and sort the data with the pivot table. It's really easy in pivot tables. I'm going to come over to the rows again. And at the moment, you can see it tells me it's sorted by the charge country in ascending order. So let's change that from the country to the sum of earnings fixed, which is this column here. Let's sort by this column. So click that. It's ascending. Let's change it to descending. All right, that's looking better. So you can see US, GB, Canada, Australia, those sorts of ones climbing up to the top. Now I still have, I can recognize obviously quite a few of these larger country names now, but some I'm not recognizing so well now. So really, we want to fix that. So we'll get to that in a moment. We'll come and fix that in a little while. Let's see where we're up to with the 10 steps though. So we looked at how we created the pivot tables. We talked about how to sort the data in the pivot tables. That was number 5. Let's do one more pivot table. And before we get to that, before we add that extra data. So again, I can copy my pivot table, like I said. So we've got the country pivot table. I can come down underneath, give myself plenty of space, and press Control V just to copy that pivot table. It's the active pivot table again. Let's take off the charge country and the fixed earnings again. Just go back to the start. And this time, let's remember one of the questions we thought we wanted to answer was, when are the popular times to people buy our courses? When do our products get sold? Because, you know, if we know that actually we do quite a lot of business at the weekend, maybe that's a good time to, you know, be on social media promoting your stuff or run a promotion. If you don't sell anything at the weekend, then it's a good time to not to do that. So again, it would help you with your marketing efforts. So let's see how we do this. Add the purchased date. Whoa, how's that helped? I can hear you asking. It doesn't look very helpful, Ben. What are you talking about? Well, what we'll do now is we've added a date. What we can do with pivot tables with dates is we can now group those dates. So effectively what we're going to do is just in our data is work out what day of the week each of these are, and then just use those. So imagine we had a column with day of the week. There would be a maximum of 7 unique categories. We're just going to create that pivot table now with these 7 categories. But instead of doing that manually with formulas, we can do it directly in the pivot table. So I click somewhere on one of my dates, doesn't matter where, any of them will do. I right click and go to create a pivot date group, and we'll choose the day of the week. And there we go. Look at that, folks. It's created those 7 categories for us, and it's going to now roll up that data for each of those categories. So it'll go through the 694 rows, and every time the date is a Sunday, it will add to that Sunday total. Every one that's a Monday, it will add to that Monday total. So just to show you that again, it was a right click, create the pivot date group. So it works when it's dates. It has some proper formatted dates where Google Sheets knows it's a date. And then you have these options. I can go and change it to something else if I want. You know, like the day of the month, 1 to 31. But let's stick with the weekday. You could go and look at the hours of the day. You know, you might be interested in that. So a lot there, a really useful feature. So then we'll add the earnings back in the values column. So earnings fixed, and just quickly format them. And I can see myself that, you know, this is not one single Thursday that I do make that much money. I mean, that would be nice. This is all of the Thursdays in my date period rolled up together to make one big total for every single Thursday. But I can see that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are when I do, you know, good. When I get sales, don't get so many over the weekend. It might be completely opposite when you look at your data. But again, it's given me insights. It's going to give you insights so you can go away and, as I said, sort of help you decide when to do your marketing and that sort of thing. Great. So that was step 6. So we're getting through our demo here. Now we get to do something really fun. So back in our pivot table, I mean, all of this has been fun. Hopefully so far, this is going to be even more fun though. We talked about this. I said that this is kind of a bit of a pain because I'm not, you know, it takes me an extra step to work out what the country is, and probably, you know, quite a few of them I don't know either. So let's fix that. So the first thing I need to do is go and get some extra data. I need to go and get a table somewhere that has these 2-letter codes. Conveniently, I have opened that tab already here in Wikipedia. So this is just a Wikipedia page about these Alpha 2 country codes. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to scroll down. Aha, that looks interesting, right? Now, I could just copy and paste, but then, that's no fun. And also, if this ever changed or whatever, it wouldn't update those changes. Instead, let's connect it to our sheet. So I'm going to come back to my sheet, come back into here. So I'm just in a blank page. There's the URL. I just copied the URL there into cell A1. I'm going to use a magic formula now called equals import HTML. It's going to import data from a table within an HTML page. So we'll go to this page here. So I'm just pointing my formula to this URL. We'll go there to that URL. I'm going to import a table, and it's in position 3. Now, there's a little bit of trial and error sometimes with whether it's table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. These often, they don't work. They're not magic bullets that work everywhere. It just so happens it plays quite nicely with Wikipedia. So let's hit enter. It's loading. Boom. Look at that. It's brought that data table into my Google Sheet for me. So now I have the data here in my Google Sheets. I've got the extra data. So if you think about, if you remember the data analysis pipeline, we went to, we had our questions, we got hold of our data, we went to the analysis. We've gone back one step just to get more data. And it's a sort of cyclical process, this data analysis pipeline of, you keep building, it's a living document, you keep building onto it. So we've got the extra data. Now we need to put that into our a main table. So let's go back there and do that quickly. So this is my Teachable data now. So I've got my Teachable data. I've got the extra data here, this table of countries, and I'm back to exactly that position about 15 years ago when I was sitting at my desk and my boss asked me to combine these two tables. I'm right there now. The beads of sweat on my forehead. What am I going to do? Am I going to just go through and type each of these, go to here, check it, come back here, type it in? No, of course not. We're not going to do any of that. We're going to do it automatically with the mighty VLOOKUP. So first thing, let's insert a column. Let's give it a color. And let's call this one, I don't know, let's say full country name. Okay, so the VLOOKUP, again, it's like the pivot table. It's has this reputation for being really hard and complex when it really, in fact, it's not too difficult. All we're going to do is take each of these cells here, go and search for it in column A here, and then return, when we find it here, return whatever value is here in column 2, just basically replacing it with column 2 there. So it goes like this. So VLOOKUP, search term is that one, the US. We want to search for the US. Where do I want to search? Well, I want to go and search in my extra data in columns A and B. It always searches the first column, and then I want to return the value from the second column. So I put in number 2 as my index. So this is 1 on the index, and this is 2 on the index. And then we'll just write false. Now, 99.9% of the time, you're probably going to write false there, and it's beyond this workshop to talk about why we'd use the true. So false it is. You can rest assured that it will be false until you're ready. You'll know the day when you're ready to check out what the true is. But false means it's going to find the exact match for us. It's going to go and find the US exactly. If it doesn't find it, it would come back with an error message. But of course, it does find US because the US is a valid 2-letter code. So we want to now fill in this whole column, of course. Quick trick, that little blue square there, if you hover over it and you get the black crosshatch and you double click, there we go. It does the work for you. Spreadsheets do the work for you. It's just about knowing which buttons to press. So let's just go all the way to the bottom again. As I said, just to make sure it's been filled into the bottom. Now that looks much better, doesn't it? We've got our data filled in, and that's much more understandable. So let's go and fix that pivot table quickly. So I come back to my pivot table. I'm going to get rid of this country that we had, the 2-letter country code, and I'm going to add in. So I have to scroll down to find it. Here it is, full country name. Let's drop that into the pivot table instead. Wow, that's much, much better. So we'll open up, and we will, of course, just do that sort again. So sort the sum of the earnings descending so that the big countries come to the top there. Great. So quick recap, we brought the data in from Wikipedia with that magic import HTML formula. So we now have a nice table of data here. I added that table of data into my main big Teachable data set using the VLOOKUP. And then from there, I can just update my pivot table because it's running off that same.
Ben, a question came in, which I think is timely for right now.
Yep.
That 3 on the import function, right? When you're pulling it from the HTML, what does that 3 connotate?
Sure, yep. So that one is the order of tables on the page. If I go back to Wikipedia and I scroll down, here's the first table on the page. Here's the second table on the page. And our one we want is the third table. So as I mentioned, it's a little bit of trial and error to find out which one it is, because it's not obvious always which tables are which. And sometimes they might look like a table, but in fact it's a list, or it's created differently with different HTML code behind the scenes. But the 3 there, which is this one, double click, this one here is referring to it's the third table on that Wikipedia page.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. Good question. So let's quickly just check in. We did bring in the external data. We did join the data. So we're getting into the home straight now. It's easy from here on out. Let's go and create a few charts. So back to my pivot table, I've got my data. What I'm going to do quickly actually is get rid of that count now, because I want to do a chart with just with the earnings. So we'll get rid of user and format those as dollars. Sorry, so that was just get rid of by clicking the X there to remove one column. I'm going to highlight those 3 lines, but skip the grand total. You don't really generally want to show any totals in your data set in your charts, because it's a bit like plotting it's double counting essentially. You'd be showing the same values again. So we'll insert the chart. So just insert the chart, and it should give us it gives us this one, which is interesting. Let's change this actually to the pie chart. So under the chart editor, you've got all your chart types. Now the pie chart is a nice one to just show this one, because we've just got 2 categories, so it works quite well. Let me just move out of there. Let's shrink this one a little bit. There we go. So pie chart, perfectly acceptable when you have 2, 3, maybe 4 categories, but no more than that. Never. We don't want to see a pie chart with hundreds of categories, because it's really hard to read. A bar chart is a more suitable one. Let's see what happens when we do. Let's highlight, let's do the first 20 countries, not all of them. Let's say I'm more interested in these ones that have a slightly higher earnings. Insert a chart. Here is a perfect example of when we should not use a pie chart, because it's really hard to read. Look at this. I can't understand what any of these are. I can't compare them. They all look the same size. So in this case, it really, all it's showing me is that the United States is where 2/3 of my business happens. But all of this stuff is really not very helpful. So in this case, let's change the pie chart into a bar chart, because then it's just much easier to see and read and compare these. So we can make this a little more readable. We don't need that. So we can just click, we can just delete that, double click it, delete that title. We can click this one and delete that. If I click inside my charts here, You see it adds the handles on my chart, so I can just drag this one out a little bit to give these a little bit more space. What else might we want to do? We might want to also add those data labels. So again, in my chart editor, I'm clicked on chart. I can click on one of the actual bars, brings up my series menu, and I can add the data labels. And then it's really, I mean, it's sort of like this table, but graphically as well now. So it's really, really easy to see, really quick to read versus when we had the pie chart, which we couldn't really understand. And then finally, the last one we might want to do is just down here. Last quick thing I'll show you with these names. I can type over the top of the names of the pivot table here if I want to make them something more readable. So I can just say day of the week. I don't need that other thing. And I don't need sum of earnings. I can just call it earnings. Then when I plot them on my chart, they're much more readable. So that was just typing over the top of the pivot table. Insert the chart. And there we go. Another bar chart. Maybe we'll do a column chart for this one, in fact. Great, so there's my 3 charts. The last thing we do is to share these findings. So we can click on the button share. We can add some emails directly with people. I can get the link to share out with people that way. The other way we can do it, I'll quickly show you, is we can go file and publish to the web. Obviously, you probably don't want to publish your Teachable stuff, but you might have spreadsheets where you go and publish it to the web. I might just choose the pivot table page, click publish. It gives you a warning because it's about to go public. You're going to click OK if you really want to do it. And then that URL there, if I copy, and I'm going to just go and do a new tab. Let's see if this works. There we go. And it's just taken me now. This is a web page. I just put that in my URL bar, and it's now published as a website. If I wanted to share this findings with some wider group or a community. Let me go back to my sheet here. If I want to unpublish that from the website, which of course I'll probably do in this case, I'll go publish to the web and stop publishing just down here. Great. Okay, so need to keep moving here. That was 9 to create the charts. 10 was to share, to publish to the web. Let's quickly go back to my Google Slides to wrap up. So just as we mentioned, this is the page to get hold of that data. You go to your sales tab, your transactions, and then you can choose a date range and then go export and export that data. So to recap, we talked about the pipeline idea. It's a question you start with, and you're going to use that data to try and answer it. So we prepared the data. That was step 1. Excuse me. We understood the data by telling the story of that one row and using that column stats feature to understand what's in each column. So we've gone across our data. We've gone down our data. Then we fixed the data. So before we jump in and do our analysis and come to conclusions, we want to fix the data. Then we created pivot tables to analyze it, sorted the data, categorized the data. Then we went back a step to step 2 to get more data, to add some extra context. We combined our data sets with the VLOOKUP. Then we created the charts, and then we looked at how to publish them to the web, how we can share those insights with our team members or even with the wider world. So that was a whistle-stop tour through the data analysis pipeline and through a full quick project in data with Teachable data, which I hope was useful. And that is the end of the formal demo of my presentation. This is the bye-bye range, column BYE. So bye-bye, thank you very much. I'm here now to stick around for some questions. Hope you enjoyed that.
Ben, that was incredible. I mean, I'm obviously in the chat, but my mind is blown. And I use Google Sheets all the time. I learned so many things that I feel like I have to go redo my personal budget because I'm using pivot tables completely wrong. Let's let folks put some more questions in. We'll try to get to as many as we could. while we get to that, can you tell a little bit about the bundle you're offering through November 30th? And I'm going to put a little banner
sure. So
folks what that is.
I've actually got, let me just bring up this next slide here. So it's basically very similar to what we've done just now. It's the same style. I go through problems. It's very practical, much slower than that was whizzing through really pretty quickly there. We go into things in a lot more detail in these courses. And it's a bundle of 3 courses. So it's the Essentials course, which will basically give you a really solid foundation of data skills, of Google Sheet skills, touching on a lot of the areas we did just now and a lot more as well. Then the Pivot Tables course, which basically builds on that. It takes the very basic pivot tables we look at there and goes as far as we can into some really, really deep topic with the pivot tables. So you feel really comfortable and confident using pivot tables. As I said, I think they're the most useful feature in a spreadsheet. So it's definitely worth learning. And then it also includes a bonus dashboard chapter. So this will tell you how to do a much better presentation than that quick one we just did right now, how to think about lining up charts and creating a really good looking dashboard report that gives you the information, that 40,000 foot view for you and your team. All the templates are included in the bundle. So, any of the data we use, any of the final dashboards we build, all of those templates are included for you to make your own copies. We have a student community with, which is nice and active with lots of questions every week. So you get access to that to join in, to ask questions. And there's no prerequisites for this bundle. So it's suitable if you're a beginner. If you're intermediate, then you'll still get a ton of value because it takes you from, it'll sort of refresh all of that knowledge and then build on it as well. The pivot tables and the dashboard go quite deep, quite far. So yeah, hopefully, if you're interested, then hopefully you're going to check it out. So thanks, Aaron.
Awesome. Well, so let's get into some of the questions. One in particular that I also would love to know the answer to is with the import function. Can you use that with something with credentials? Like specifically, let's say you wanted to read like a bank statement or something behind a paywall. Because Wikipedia, obviously, there's nothing blocking that.
It only works with public data. So something that you or I could just view in a browser. If you're doing credential stuff, you need code and APIs.
Got it. So we've pushed the boundary too far. We want to go behind the paywall. That's fair. To repeat, just for everyone, I keep seeing in the chat, people want to watch the replay. They want to make sure they can go back, follow step by step. There will be a replay available. So don't worry, we will send that out. We'll also be on this workshop link. So if you wanted to rewatch this and follow Ben step by step, don't worry about it. There will be a replay. Let me grab another question. Ben, a quick one. Does your bundle include access to Expire? Does that question make sense? Sorry, I'm trying to grab these on the fly. Does the course access expire? Oh, I'm so sorry. Does the course access expire? No. Ben, you can answer that. You have lifetime access. You buy the course. You don't have to finish it in a weekend.
No, it's there for forever. Yep.
Yeah, sorry about that, Arlen. I saw your question. I did want to say thank you to Rebecca in the chat. I'll get to the next question, but Rebecca, I saw you posted a how-to about the status bar. That was another question that came up, if you want to briefly touch on it, is how to create that great status bar you demonstrated.
Yeah, I tell you, I think that's more popular than the actual than the content itself on every webinar. So it's a sparkline, actually. It's this formula called sparkline. And it just goes and counts down here whether I've checked a box or not. And then it just displays this chart type as a bar. So Sparkline, I've got a really in-depth tutorial on my website about Sparkline. That's a really fun, a really good formula to know, actually.
Great. Sorry, I'm trying to grab another question. Yep. Another one from Willie is importing data from a PDF file. Is that something you can do? Can you speak a bit to that?
Yeah, good question, actually. It's not something I've tried for so many years now that I'm not sure the best way. I think there are certainly programs that do it. I think there might be something in Google Sheets. And it's one of those things that it's not fail-safe, in my experience. This is going back a few years. There were I've imported PDFs and most of the data comes in pretty much okay, but sometimes it'll miss stuff or characters will be slightly off and things. So PDFs are kind of still a little bit tricky to deal with. So yeah, sorry, I don't have the best answer right there actually for that one.
It's a hard question. A very specific question. Jeff Mosby asks, we have a group of secretaries who would like to give basic training. Would something like this bundle be best, or would you recommend something like a live training?
A great question. I mean, I think both could work. I think that, there are benefits to people having access to materials. They can just work on at their own pace and their own time because, there's no pressure then if they feel like they're not keeping up during a live class, in which case, my courses are there on demand. And then conversely, a live class is obviously great because you get the accountability, you get to ask questions as you go of the instructor. So definitely both have their benefits. One thing I've seen that's been really successful before is if a group of people are doing an on-demand course, but they meet for 1 hour, one lunchtime a week, and all do say 1 or 2 of the lessons together. And that way, if somebody really gets that lesson, it's quite easy. They can almost become the teaching assistant for that lesson and help all of their colleagues. So that's a great way to do it as well.
Great. Question just came in is, could you perhaps give a quick explanation of creating pivot tables in Google Sheets for something like Data Studio? Just if you have any pros and cons that come into mind.
So I think, in Google Sheets, if your data's there, it's obviously immediate. It's right there. It doesn't involve another tool. And it's a little easier to probably understand because your data's right next to that tab and you can go back and check it and see what's happening. Data Studio is pretty easy. Again, it's drag and drop, but again, it's just because it's different, it is something else you need to go and learn. And it has, you can create those pivot tables there. You can do your charts there. And so if you're doing a lot of reporting and visual stuff, Data Studio is an amazing tool, absolutely worth learning. I use it myself and rate it very highly. So yeah, I think it really sort of depends on the situation. I think for when you're doing your analysis and you're really focusing on the analysis piece and the data and exploring your data and answering questions, then the Google Sheet is a great option. When you're doing your final presentation, then that's when you might consider moving to Data Studio.
And thank you so much for that, Ben. A question about your shirt. Folks are asking, is that shirt something that you have for sale? Yeah, I have a spreadsheet for that.
Yeah. So
folks are asking, do you have that for sale, or where did you get it? Is that something?
So actually, this was a shirt from SheetsCon, which is the online Google Sheets conference that I ran back in March, and it was from the swag bags giveaway that we did at Google SheetsCon. So they're not available right now, but SheetsCon is all about a Google Sheets conference. It's going to happen again in March next year, March or April, and these shirts will be available again then next year. So awesome!
It is a great shirt. So Ben, for folks who take your class, so any of your classes, but even the bundle that's above us today, is there the opportunity to ask questions to you? Because I don't think we got to every question today, and I know we're going to be at time in a minute here. Can you speak a bit about that? Like if someone has a question, they're stuck, and they're a member of one of your courses. Is there any?
Yeah. So we have the Facebook group, and it's well over 1,000 members now. We get a lot of good questions there, and I check it every day. And it's rare that I'm the first person to answer a question. There's almost always somebody in the community is answering questions before me. Get there first, but I'm there and I check in, and I do. If I feel I can add some value, I'll always answer questions there. So definitely I can be accessed that way, and also reachable on email if for questions as well. Although it's a little harder to reply to every technical question that comes my way via email.
Totally makes sense. With 1 minute left, everyone in the chat, let's thank Ben for his presentation today. I learned a ton. I know y'all learned a ton. Ben, this was incredible. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving this free workshop. But
thank you very much.
So much.
yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, folks. We're going to be signing off the broadcast in just a moment. For those who asked, because I've seen it repeated a few times, Ben, if you get a chance, perhaps we could put together, cleaned up data that we could share out with the replay. That way, folks who want to play with this and don't have a Teachable school, they can try that out. And again, there will be a replay available. So, folks, if you loved what you watched today, please check out Ben's bundle above if you haven't taken one of his courses yet. Ben, thank you so much. And with that, we will end this broadcast. Bye, everyone.
Bye.